Good morning and welcome to lesson 331. We're going to be diving into the lesson and also into what is the ego. But first, let us take our holy moment where we quiet the mind and still the body and just open our hearts and open ourselves up to absorbing and taking in this new lesson. So gently closing your eyes down, allowing the body to fall still as it settles in its seat, allowing the shoulders and the jaw to relax and the belly to become soft. Allowing yourself time to notice your breath. And this morning, we will use a similar little meditation to the one yesterday morning, but this time we're going to take time to see ourselves as a mountain or like a mountain. Breathing in, I see myself like a mountain. Breathing out, I see myself as solid and safe. And then you just change to mountain and solid. And this is recognizing your steadiness, your stability, which comes from knowing the truth of who you be. So mountain and solid, breathing in, mountain, breathing out, solid. Feeling that steadiness right through you, knowing that whatever comes your way, the universe has got your back, that you are steady, a steady pillar of light and of love. And then we gently tuck our chins and bow our heads. We begin this day in gratitude. We open our hearts and we surrender to love. We ask love to lead the way through the minutes and the hours of this new day. We welcome joy, fun, and abundant prosperity. We recognize that all encounters are wholesome and that all experiences can be met with a peaceful heart that is anchored in the truth, that we are one, that we are love, and that we are free. And so we release these words and we let it be. So our first piece is, what is the ego? So the ego is idolatry, the sign of a limited and separated self, born in a body, doomed to suffer and end its life in death. It is the will that sees, so it's small will in inverted commas, that sees the will, large will, of God as enemy, and takes a form in which the will of God is denied. The ego is the proof that strength is weak and love is fearful. Life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true. So it's really, that's kind of really intense, when you read it. And at the same time, our lives become intensely fearful when we live by the ego. So sometimes we need to see the words written in this way. But basically, what it's saying, it's the identifying with all sorts of different beliefs that are all separate. There are all these ideas that we're alone, that we're separate, that we're on this sort of individualized journey of suffering, and within the suffering then we separate ourselves out further because we curl up in little balls in our houses, and there's none of this idea of collective consciousness, and there's none of this idea that we are one with love and that we are one with God. It's the complete opposite. And it also, when we overly identify with the body, of course, when the body dies, we die, and that's the end of it. And so the whole thing feels like pretty shitty and quite an ordeal. On the other hand, the will of God is that we wake up, that we recognize that we are love, that we always were love, and that we will be love forevermore. And this lends itself to joy and to ease and to grace, and to, whilst we're in a body, having a very heavenly and divine experience. We also make nothing wrong. So we recognize that every stage of the journey is to be respected on some level. However, we ignore nothing. So the voice for God is continually speaking to us. The voice for the ego can become very loud, and it drowns out that voice for God. And at the same time, we get little inklings, we get little chinks of light, we get little calls, we get little whisperings. And we're invited to follow those because they're the way home. They're the breadcrumbs that are going to take us home and lead us back to love and to remembering that we're love. And we all have this craving for home. Like, we have this craving for peace, this longing for love, this longing, even, dare I say, for community somewhere deep inside in us. But we've become so accustomed to this individualized way of doing things that we fear the idea of community or mehel or doing things together. And so we stay in this egoic, separate place until it becomes so, I suppose, alienated that we can't stand it anymore, and we realize it's getting us nowhere. And that's usually when we begin to turn around and search, because there is this knowing, this we're like homing pigeons. There's something in us that kind of goes, okay, I'm done with this adventure out there. And I think I'm going to head home now. So it goes on to say, the ego is insane. In fear, it stands beyond the everywhere, apart from all, in separation from the infinite. In its insanity, it thinks it has become a victor over God. And in its terrible autonomy, it sees the will of God has been destroyed. It dreams of punishment and trembles at the figures in its dreams, its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its safety by attacking them. So basically, again, it has us in this very defensive place and believing that there's something that we need to defend against. But what in truth we're defending against is love, and allowing love in, and allowing our lives to be led in love. And that means being led in mystery. So when we're defending and, we're planning and we're, trying to have all eventualities and everything covered, then we're not in that place of trust. So to follow God or love is quite scary to the ego, because it's used to micromanaging every moment and every single thing. And, every day, we decide that we're going to surrender to love and ask love to lead the way, not knowing where it's going to take us. So it's like I've spoken before about Mary Magdalene leaving Egypt in a boat with no oars, a rudderless boat, they say, and she just asked to be taken where she was supposed to be. And she ended up in Marseille and, set up home in the south of France. And so basically, to the ego, this is madness. This way of just letting God do whatever they want willy-nilly, or letting creation or love, do whatever it wants willy-nilly. It just seems kind of ludicrous to the ego. Now, here's the truth. The child of God is egoless. What can it know of madness and death of God when it abides in God? What can it know of sorrow and of suffering when it lives in eternal joy? And what can it know of fear and punishment, of sin and guilt, of hatred and attack, when all there is surrounding it is everlasting peace? Forever conflict, free and undisturbed, in deepest silence and tranquility. So this is your true nature, and this is who you truly be your ego less, in fact. So the ego is an illusion. And, again, I suppose for me, one of the easiest things to, or the most helpful things to me is to, think about Shakespeare's words about all the world being a stage and we're the players on it. And so we play all sorts of different parts. Unfortunately, if you get on the stage and you play, the part of Othello, and you overly identify with Othello, you start to think you're Othello and you forget that actually you're an innocent child of God playing the part of Othello, and that you've got to get out of character. You can stop being, the character, but we're like method actors and we stay in character all the time until one day we kind of go, I don't even like this character. Why am I playing this character? And then you decide to get out of character. So it's like you start to take off the costume, you take off the mask, or you take off the makeup. And basically that's what we're doing is, returning to who we really were in the first place. To know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, its works, its acts, its laws, and its beliefs, its dreams, its hopes, its plans for its salvation, and the cost belief in it entails. In suffering, the price for faith in the ego is so immense that crucifixion of the child of God is offered daily at its darkened shrine, and blood must flow before the altar where its sickly followers prepare to die. Okay, again, very, very strong words. But if you look at, even a low-grade level of suffering that is there all the time, and anxiety and stress when we follow the path of the ego, these words really are quite fitting because, daily people suffer. And there are people right now, maybe suffering to a greater degree than you are. But at the same time, if you were to look into their suffering, you would start to feel that same suffering with them. And when we know that there is a relief from this, there is an answer to this, there's a whole other way of looking at the world and knowing the world. Wouldn't you be mad, insane, not to take that path? So here we go. Yet one lily of forgiveness can change the darkness. Yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light, the altar to illusions, to the shrine of life itself. So stop worshipping at the altar of illusions and start to worship at the shrine of life itself. And peace will be restored forever to the holy minds which God created as God's child's dwelling place. God's joy, God's love, completely God's, completely one with God. And isn't that where you want to dwell? Again, being in that place like, do I choose this or do I choose this? On one hand, I can have peace. All I've got to do is use forgiveness, forgive this whole play that I've been caught up in, recognize it for what it is. Or, on the other hand, I can stay in the play, and that's okay too. You just happen to be in a play, but I know what I want to choose. So it goes on to, oh no, that's not where it continues. Sorry, 1 second. Here we are. So here's the actual lesson then. There is no conflict, for my will is yours. So the conflict is at the level of the illusion. How foolish, my creator, to believe your child could cause itself to suffer. Could it make a plan for its damnation and be left without a certain way to its release? And you see, that's the key. There is a way to our release. It's not like you might feel stuck and you might feel like you're in hell, but there is a way to your release. And it's to remember that. You love me, creator, and you would never leave me desolate to die within a world of pain and cruelty. How could I think that love has left itself? There is no will except the will of love. Fear is a dream and has no will that can conflict with yours. Conflict is sleep and peace is awakening. Death is illusion. Life is eternal truth. There is no opposition to your will. So the opposition only exists in the illusion. There is no conflict, for my will is yours. Forgiveness shows us that God's will is one and that we share it. Let us look upon the holy sights forgiveness shows today, that we may find the peace of God. Amen. So for me, it's like forgiveness just lifts up all these layers that we have placed upon ourselves and upon others. Like it literally, or dissolves them. So imagine if everything you knew or thought about somebody was just dissolved in one moment. And you saw them in the very same way as you would look upon a newborn baby. In the same way that you can look on yourself like you would look upon a newborn baby. Like that magnificent, innocent light. And, this is what forgiveness is. It's inviting us to see the truth, to see what's really there, which is the light that is in each and every one of us. So move about your day today with namaste on your lips. The light in me sees the light in you. And relieve yourself from any pain and suffering. Have a beautiful day.